high quality videos. I'm gonna first change the exposure mode. And so I'm gonna hit the menu icon right here and then hop into the second menu, change the shoot mode into manual. Like I said, intelligent auto is great if you're just wanting to press record and get going. But I'm gonna set this to manual. Another way you can access this is through FN, and at the bottom right, you could see that manual or all the exposure settings are here, just so you know that if you ever wanted to choose video mode by pressing that button twice. So now that we've dialed our resolution and our frame rate, I'm gonna hit this FN button and I'm gonna change my focus area to wide. I just wanna make sure that it's scanning the entire frame for my face. And then I'm gonna hit FN again. I'm actually gonna turn off the soft skin effect because I'm just happy with my face. And then I'm going to change the steady shot from active to off. Like you could see how much it zooms in when it's on active. So if I plan on shooting like talking head YouTube videos or something, you can imagine how much more lens you're getting when you have it off. However, if you are vlogging, then by all means, you could turn that on if you'd like to. But this at 16 millimeters is sweet. The next thing we're gonna do is just a rule that you could always remember is I'm gonna double my shutter based off of my frame rate. So I'm at 24 frames, like you can see from the top, which means my shutter speed is gonna be 50. So I'm just gonna take this big wheel and I'm gonna scroll it to 50, and then that never has to change. The next thing that essentially never has to change is my aperture. So I'm gonna take the wheel on the top and scroll that back, and that's gonna put me at 3.5 because I'm using the kit lens. And now the only thing I really have to change to dial in my shot is my ISO based on my shot. So right now it's on auto, and I'm gonna put this at around 250, which looks pretty good. And you can always double check your exposure by looking at those numbers at the bottom right where it says 0.00. If I changed my ISO and made it super bright, you can see it says plus 1.3, or if I went really dark, it's gonna tell me that I'm at -3. But you're good to be around 0.3, but I like, 0 is just a good rule of thumb, but feel free to move around that as needed. The next thing you can do is just lock in your white balance. And so you can keep it on auto if you'd like to, but I'd like to lock it in because I usually shoot in stationary places. So you can just go to this C temp filter, and then I'm simply going to scroll this back about 4,700. It's kind of daytime temperature, which I always set my lighting to, or I use a window or something. You're pretty good leaving it at around 4,500 to 5,000 in my opinion. And then if you really want to go there, a lot of people can go 1.5 over here and then go 1.5 over here. Not to go too deep into the color science of Sony, they have improved it, but this does add a little bit more magenta to the image. So if you'd like to do that, you can. So I'm just gonna leave it at 1.5 and 1.5 and hit OK. And really right here, you're ready to shoot videos. And so that's pretty much all you gotta do to do that. Then we're gonna move into this. Let me put it in video mode so all this turns on. So we're in video mode, that's why it was grayed out. But on this first page, you have your shoot mode, which again could be accessed by the FN button when you're in the main shooting stuff. You have your USB streaming, which we added to the custom menu. And then we have your resolution and your frame rate and your S&Q settings. We messed with all this already, so let's move on. We got proxy recording, which is one of my favorite features on Sony cameras. You can actually shoot a low quality version of your video simultaneously, meaning if I turn this on, okay, and I hit record, I'm gonna have a 4K file, and then I'm gonna have a 1080 or a 720p file. So if you have a slow computer, you can actually tell your computer to communicate to the lower quality files, and then when you render, it'll export the high quality files. That's proxy. A little deep, but if you learn about proxy with a slow computer, you'll speed up your workflow. But if you have a decent computer, the 4K files that aren't that crazy out of this camera. And then we have the speed of focus. I just keep this as is. If you wanna slow it down, you can slow it down. If you wanna speed it up, you could speed it up. Pretty straightforward. And then we have audio recording, which obviously you wanna keep on. So next page, third page is your levels. Again, this is accessed by hitting FN, and then you can adjust on the fly, which is nice. You the ability to see it, so you want to keep that on. Audio out timing, don't need to worry about any of this stuff. You can turn on wind noise reduction, which for the onboard mic could be helpful. So you can turn that on and use that as needed. Why not leave that on just in case, right? And so then we have steady shot, which is the 3 levels, which again could be accessed by hitting FN. Let me just show you. Hit FN, and then under here in the bottom left you have active, standard, and then off. So just a few things that you can know about. And then we have steady shot settings, but you don't need to worry about that. So on this 4th page we have marker display and marker settings. You don't need to worry about that. Emphasize during record. This is an awesome feature because when I hit record, it's gonna put a red box around the screen, which is nice when you're recording yourself. And then also the record lamp also turns on the light on the front of the camera, which is nice. And then you can do movie with shutter if you'd like to, but there's already a record button on the top of this camera, so you don't need to worry about that. Silent shooting, that's for photography. If you want to turn off the shutter noise, unless you need to do that, so you can do that as well. Something that's deep in the menu that you could add to the favorites menu, or you can add it to the FN's menu, the functions menu, but that's okay anyway. Moving on, so we're gonna go to zoom range. This is various different ways you can use the zoom rocker on this camera. So if I have clear image zoom on, we can go like this and we can get clear image zoom. I think that's what that means. Or I can go optical, which is just the lens itself. So clear image zoom is digital, and then this is actually, if the lens has the capability, it'll zoom with the lens, which I think is pretty sweet. So I'm going to leave that on optical, especially with the kit lens. Just leave it on optical. And then all this other stuff, you can leave it as is. We have display button, which you can customize what shows you, but don't worry about that. Zebra settings. This is not a cinema camera, so you don't have to worry about zebra settings. I might get roasted in the comments. I like the grid line, so I like having the rule of thirds grid, which is essentially the 9 boxes, but I know when I'm centered in camera with that, so I like actually keeping that on. It doesn't bug me. Also helps me keep the camera leveled at certain times. Exposure set guide, we'll leave it. Auto review is on for 2 seconds. That's if you take a photo, it'll show you the photo you just took without having to press play. And then one of my favorite things with Sony's is just the ability to like fully customize the entire camera. And so based off of what you find yourself doing often by going back in the menu, if it doesn't make sense to add to the custom menu, you can actually add it to places like here. So if you want to, I'll never mess with soft skin effect because personally I just don't need to. So I can actually swap that out for something else I think I'll need. So for instance, I'm going to hit this right here, and then I'm just going to go to the soft skin girl, and then I'm just going to take her off and just change it to something like silent shooting because it was deep in the menu. So now if I'm shooting at like church or something, I can just go here, shooting photos, and then turn this off, which is nice. So you can use it based off of how you use the camera itself. So that's kind of all this. So I like how it generally comes, but if you think you need something special, just start adding certain shortcuts and things like that to the camera. The 9th page, you have touch operation, which I'm a fan of touch tracking. You don't need to necessarily do anything else. Touch tracking just simply puts a box around something you tap on and it focuses on it, which is I think what most people would want it to do. We have audio signals. I actually like them off because I'm not trying to be a goober pressing record 30 times in a quiet room or at a wedding, and people are like, dude, shut off that thing. And then we have a lot of the other things that have to do with like connecting to your smartphone and sending photos to your smartphone. I think these are all separate use cases, so we don't have to go through it now, but that's what this all is. And then this next portion of the menu is all about when you hit the play button and review photos or videos. Really, everything is straightforward. You don't really have to mess with anything, except I'm not a fan as my photos showing in groups. I just like them to be individual. So, I just want all my photos to be just straight in front of me. If you do it as groups, it's just gonna group different photos and then you have to click in, but just turn it off. Just trust me on that one. Turn it off, so that's cool. And then we're good on the playback menu. Now we're almost done, guys. You made it so far. Oh my goodness, congratulations. Anyway, so we have our monitor brightness, which you can make it bright or manual. Sunny weather makes it very bright, which is nice, but if you want to save battery, you can just leave it on manual and adjust that as needed. But just know that if you go outside, you could make it brighter, which is nice to know. We have gamma display assist. This is only if you're really shooting with like S-Log or flat colored profiles. It'll just show you like a fake color corrected version of your clip so you can get an idea of it. We have volume settings, which is when you play back your footage. You can adjust that even then, but we can keep that maxed that out, that's fine. Delete, confirm, just leave all this. You don't want to mess with this. One thing I do like to do is under power saving option or power setting option, I do put this auto power off on high, so when the camera gets warm, because I don't want my camera to shut off, it's not going to melt from the internals, and that's the warning it gives you, but just trust me on that one as well. Just put that on high and you'll be glad you did. And then this next screen, really the only thing is touch operation. If you like to use the screen to, touch stuff like focus and this and that, leave it on. If you don't, turn it off, but I'll leave it on. Then we have HDMI settings, which you don't have to use an HDMI with this camera because you can just use a USB and then hit the USB mode. But this is just so, you could set it manually based off of the resolution that goes out. HDMI info display, you probably want that off because you don't want to show all your settings. But really, these two things that I just did are great, and you'd be good to go based off of those two things. So that's HDMI settings. We have a couple other things that don't really matter. If you do want to adjust your date and time, you can do that here. Change your language, you can do that here. And then this fourth page, really the only thing that needs to be mentioned is that you can change the name of your files. So you can
Number one, we've got to nail the focus. Okay, so first off, I've actually mapped my focus setting to be in my function menu to access it faster. Function menu here is in tab 2 and we're on page 8. Function menu set, you can go in here. It's gonna be different when you first take your camera out of box, but you can click on anything here and you can scroll through and set it to something different. I have this box here, it doesn't matter which box you put it in, but I have this set for focus area. Let's look at that in the actual camera interface here. I click on my function menu and we can see that focus area here. I'm gonna select that. Typically out of box, the camera is gonna come in this focus area wide. I don't think that's the best option for photography. I really like this expandable or flexible spot. I'm gonna select that. I can now move this around, select my subject, whatever I wanna take a shot of, click the center button on the back wheel here of the camera, lock that in, and fire away. Number 3, get used to manual mode. When I go into the menu here, I'm gonna go to tab 1 and on page 3, I can select this option. Now here's gonna give me the ability, the camera's gonna come default in this intelligent auto mode. And this mode can be really good when you're just starting out. The camera's gonna do all the work for you to get proper exposure. However, sometimes the decisions that it has to make will produce unsharp images or make your images too bright or too dark at times. And there's certainly a better way to do that through manual. Manual, which is down here, I'm gonna select manual here. Manual is certainly more intimidating, but I can tell you if you wanna get really good and get the most out of this camera's photography capabilities, you're gonna have to start to get used to manual mode. Once I select manual mode, that's gonna give me complete control over my shutter speed and my aperture and my ISO. Number 4, RAW over JPEG. Shooting RAW, the files will be a little bit bigger, not much, but they're gonna give you a tremendous amount more of flexibility when it comes to editing the photos in post, something like Lightroom or whatever it is that you're using. The image is gonna have a lot more data, which is gonna allow you to push the colors further, or maybe you slightly missed exposure, you can bring that exposure back in post without having the image look too crazy. When you shoot in JPEG, trying to do that, it's still possible, but you don't have nearly as much flexibility as you do in RAW. How to access RAW, you're gonna go to your menu, and on tab 1, page 1, file format, we're gonna switch this to RAW. Number 5, white balance and creative looks. Jumping in the menu, we are on tab 1, page 8. We see these white balance options. First thing you wanna have here, make sure you have auto white balance selected, and then next, priority set and auto white balance. These different options are gonna change slightly how the camera is handling color. I found for Sony cameras that making it, instead of using what it comes out of the box of auto white balance standard, choosing this auto white balance white, I found this provides a lot more desirable colors coming out of these Sony cameras. And then for all of these creative styles and picture effects and picture profiles, I'll come back to this, but creative styles and picture effects, turn these off. Standard is the same as off and picture effect is off. Just trust me on this one. And then for picture profile, we wanna come down and wanna turn that off completely.